Okay, so let's get started. This action form 3.7 release actually marks a big milestone in the development of our products and also in the development of DNN, because we've added, we are bringing material design to our products and to DNN. And this is probably the biggest changes we did since we adopted Bootstrap and AngularJS. And if you're not familiar with material design, I will explain that during this webinar. And this is a big change on the front end, but we also have a few changes on the server side, and I will briefly go over them. We have made a lot of work around the item data sources for the dropdowns, and actually we did some changes that allow data sources to have parameters, so this opens a whole new world of possibilities, and I will show you just two things that we did, just two implementations. And then we added the ability to clone fields and action. This has been a very popular request in the productivity area. And we've integrated the file upload with the DNN folder providers. So now you could upload folders to different storage locations like Azure, Amazon S3, and so on. And we also added new tokens around the file upload. We've added tokens for getting the file size, the file type, and the MIME type, tokens like that. Another change that we did is we extended the tag control. The tags control, if you're not familiar, lets you type predefined words. And we've implemented two new features. We implemented tokens for getting the value that was submitted. Previously only the text was available. And another feature to limit the number of tags that you can submit. And one of our clients was actually using this tag control for pre-filling a to field. So where you put where to send a message to, it was pre-filled with a list of people in the organization using the tag control. And then we added another option is to allow tokens in input fields. That is to take tokens from the front side, so to effectively allow users to submit tokenized content. So that's another very important feature, but I will go over that a bit later because it has some security concerns as well. And then we've also added a login fallback mechanism, because many of you are using the form as a login form, and then if there's an error like a trial expiration or even an error in the software, you risk of being locked out of the portal. And also we have some new add-ons. We have the Stripe add-on that we are going to release this week. We have the Excel add-on that we've already released. And we are almost done with an Easy DNN News add-on that will publish articles and events into the Easy DNN News. There's a lot to cover, but I will not show you all of these features. I will go into the material design and then highlight some of these features as they come along. So before moving on, let me see if we have any questions. No questions. So what is material design? This is a new standard that is being defined by Google, and you can search it up on Google, material design, and it basically has three principles around it. Yes, and maybe you'll find a lot of valuable content here. But basically it's based on motion, on bold graphics. You see very distinct colors, and let's look at a few styles. For example, in the components, you've probably seen this around because it's been around maybe for a few months. Yeah. So this is material design. You see some shadows, contrast, colors. Very clear delimitations, animations when you hover items, and so on. So this is basically the material design, and it's becoming the new standard on the web. So it's basically replacing Bootstrap, but you can, what we did, we actually implemented the material design on top of Bootstrap. So it's like an extension of Bootstrap, but you could easily replace Bootstrap with material design. So let me show you how this looks in action form. One question from Jim: isn't material design designed primarily for phone and small screens? I don't think so. I think material design, actually, if I go a step back, there's actually, when you start a new website, when you start a new design, most often it's recommended that you put mobile first, because if it works for mobile, it's easy to make it work for large screens as well, whereas the other way around would be very difficult. But responsive is one thing, and design is another thing. Yeah? And I will show you right now. I will create a form, and you'll see some forms that you've already seen on different websites, and they work beautifully also on large screens. Okay, so I will start with a contact form, and I'm going now to create a new form, and you already see traces of the material design. You already see the contrast colors, and when I go over a button, you already see some animations. And when I click it, you see other animations, and you see thick borders when I click it. So this is part of material design. But let's start with the form. And I will come back to the admin after that, because the admin also is based on material design. So let's look at the front end. So I have a contact form, but now when I focus the form, you see a blue line appears to reflect focus. And I don't know if you can see that, but it's like an animation. So that's the idea, to make animation emphasize the focus of where the user is in your application. Yes, and also take a look at the button. Again, when you click it, you see an animation. I don't know how much you can see that, but it's like an animation happening inside the button. And then when I click send now, you see the validation also has a red line. So the line that was focused now blue, now it's red to reflect invalid input. Yeah. So this is material design applied to forms, because this is just a small area of what material design means. You can apply material design to a lot of things. So now let's go back to the administration area. And I will show you how we applied it also on the backend. Okay? So what I have here is the action form administration console. And again, we see how we made these bold colors, the very distinct sections. You see animations. When I click the button, you can see animation happening. Yeah, you can see the checkboxes, the drop downs. Yeah, so all the form fields follow the principle of material design. This is basically material design. One important aspect that I have to cover is that when you will upgrade, you will still be on the Bootstrap templates. You will, on the front end, you will not see the material design. Only new forms start with the material template. So, but for existing form, you can get into the general settings and switch from Bootstrap to material. Yeah, the reason behind this is obvious. We don't want to break existing forms. If they implement custom styles, for example, they would integrate with the website. We don't want to break that. But for new forms, if you add a new form to the page, it will look like what you saw here. So I'll move on. If you don't have any questions on material design, I will just move on to the next topic. And I will show you how we created the drop-downs with the data sources. Yes, now I have a drop-down, and what I can do now is I can also clone it. You can see the clone button here at the right. Yes, so you can easily clone fields. It doesn't make so much sense to clone a drop-down unless you have some SQL, but for buttons with actions, it will be very valuable. Here we have the data source, and notice that now previously it used to be a text area here where you either put the items or you'd write the SQL, or there will be a different drop-down, this data source drop-down, where you'd select one of these roles, portal files, and so on data sources. What we did now is we changed items and SQL query also into data sources. And these data sources now allow parameters. So previously, like we had the roles data source, it doesn't accept any parameters. But with the items data source, you can see additional parameters coming here on the under the data source. Yeah? So for example, the SQL query would have the connection string and the SQL query. And basically the feature that we had to implement was this one with the ability to populate the dropdown from a different database using a custom connection string here. But we've implemented this in a way that can be extended and used for other purposes. Because I don't know if you're familiar, and I would just go over it a bit. This, all these actions and input controls are defined in the configuration files. So let me show you how the configuration file for a data source looks like. Yeah, so usually it's either an XML or a JSON file, and then you have a data source node, and then you have a name and an implementation. This implementation actually returns data source, and this is what the developer does. But then you have the option to specify a list of parameters, like for the items I have the items text area, and this parameter is passed to the data source so the developer knows what items to return. So for the item list, the response is obvious, but for the SQL query, what the implementation does is it runs the query using the connection string that was provided and return a list of items. And this can be easily extended with new data sources. So if you are a developer, or if you need a new data source, you can find a developer to implement this item, a new item data source for you, so you can feed data into the dropdown. Let's move on then. If there are not any questions, I'll move on. I see Jim has a question, but it's in relation to the other piece. He asks, are the CSS files for each form editable per portal, or do you override them in the portal? Well, the templates are not per portal, but you can obviously override the CSS files. The CSS styles, you can override them from the portal CSS file, or you can even override them from the page. You can go to the DNN in page settings, in the meta tags, I think it's called, and you can add your own styles there, which only affect that page. In terms of customizations, the UI is most easy to customize it if you have a good designer. Now let's move on to the allow tokens option. So the use case that we had to satisfy here, it was like a bulk emailer. It was not actually a bulk emailer, but we wanted to send emails from an application. And there was a person writing the template and actually saving the templates. Yes. But when the template was loaded, it would have tokens inside, like hello username. But this is on the front end of the form. Yeah, so it's like I create a form, like for example, let me go back here to my form. Like here in the form, I would want to say hi and then use a token, user first name. Yes. If you try to do this now, it would not work. It would just display this string as it appears because tokens are not evaluated by default. The reason behind this is security, because tokens can expose a lot of information that you don't want to expose. But also, if you have like my tokens, you can create custom tokens that can also do stuff, not only read, but can also perform actions on the server. So that's why you have to be careful to enable this option only when you trust the users, only when you trust the environment where this feature is used. And this option can be enabled from the field. I think each field that accepts input has it. So it would be this option here to allow tokens. So before I move on, I have another questions from Robrecht regarding the other feature, the previous feature. So maybe I'm talking too fast. I should leave you guys to ask your questions before I move to the next topic. So his question is data source questions. You can configure extra parameters, including drop-down parameters. Can you populate them? So you can configure extra parameters, including drop-down parameters, yes, and you can populate them, yes. So if I understand correctly, and I will do here just a quick hack, you can have a parameter that's different type, that's like a drop-down, and I would just maybe, let's see, I will search in other config files because most of the files have the same structure. Select, yeah, find one that's not commented. Yeah, so for example this one, if I just get it from here and I put it in the item data sources, what will happen is that I will have a drop-down that displays this item in the list. So this would be the value and this would be the title that's depending in the drop-down. Yeah, so in this case I just hard-coded the values here in the config file, but of course you can feed these items through a different data source. So let me go back to another select. Yeah, so you see this is another parameter that is also of type select, but it, instead of having the items like previously I had the items here in the settings, now it has the data source rows, which means the drop-down parameter gets populated with the rows. I could show this, but the demo is on a different server, so until I start my local server with the webinar and all, it will probably take 5 to 10 minutes. But you can easily try this. Just play with the parameter nodes, and that's it. But then you need to implement the C# code that actually uses this parameter, that does something with that. I hope this answers your question. So let's move on. Next thing that I want to show is the login fallback. So the problem that our clients have is that they use action form as a login form. So they set that page as the login page, but then we had a case when the trial expired, so the user was logged out of the site. And of course we can have situations where there is a bug in the software that could cause the user to be logged out of the system. So it's important to have a fallback mechanism, so you can get back in and take the appropriate actions like activate, reactivate the trial by a license, activate it, maybe replace it, maybe reactivate the standard login, stuff like that. And this URL will actually be displayed in the trial expire message. So when the action form says the trial has expired, it will also show the link. It will also say, are you logged out of the portal? Use this link. Yes. And this link actually is just a page that uses the standard login control. It's not fancy, we didn't skin it just anything, it's just a fallback mechanism. Yeah? So it's just a plain ASP.NET web forms page that includes the account login control, and you can log in here and get back inside. And you can use this for other purposes as well, so it ships with action form. So if you are locked out of any out of the site because of any reason, not necessarily because of action form, you can use this URL to get back in. Yeah, so it's like it's not like a backdoor because users can't bypass login anyway. I mean, this uses the DNN code, so same security rules will apply, like if they try too many times and so on. Let's check the questions. One question: is it possible to register or login user with Facebook or Google? I think this is possible in DNN with they have providers, and I think they ship with the community edition, or you can install them for free. We are also looking into building that interaction form. We were actually looking into building a full registration solution on top of action form, action grid, and that includes all this functionality like a login form, a forgot password form, a registration form, and with all the power that action form provides, and then also a action grid module for user management, and then maybe also throw in some MailChimp add-on or stuff like that. That's very useful for user registration. And at that point, I think we'll also look into supporting Facebook and Google authentication. But I think even right now it might be possible using the server request actions. I haven't really tried it, but I imagine their authentication relies on some handshake between the server and Google and the user and Google, something like that. So I see another questions. Can the tokens be used in static text and text boxes? If use the tokens for drop-downs using field name text, they do not seem to work in static text field or even text box. I'm not sure that I understand, but I think you can use tokens inside text boxes. Obviously you can use tokens. I mean, we did this many times where you have a text box that initializes with user first name, for example. Actually, I imagine that if you want to display the value of a control in another control, you're probably looking to do that on the servers, on the client side, not on the server side, because on the server side you can only do it at the initializations, or you can do it on when a button is clicked. If you want to do it on the client side, you can use the binding expressions. Yeah, so if I want inside the message, if I want to show what I have here, let me see, the first name, I just use it like this, and then whatever I type in the first name field should go into the message as well. You see? So if you want to do this on the client side, you have to use the bindings, the value binding. So I think that's all, but let me go back a bit to go again over the highlights to make sure I haven't forgot anything. So material design is the big thing on the front end, and then we have these drop-down data sources, some UI fixes. I haven't shown you the file upload, but that would be difficult to show you. Basically, it will work with the DNN folder providers, and you have to take my word for it. And then this allow tokens, the login fallback, and of course the new add-ons that we have underway. We had a lot of interest in the EasyDNN news integration. We actually implemented for a customer that was concerned about the complexity of submitting content into EasyDNN news and wanted a simpler, responsive and so on solution. That's why we build it for that client. But then we received a lot of feedback that a lot of people would be interested, because that's a real pain in EasyDNN. So I think this EasyDNN news will be out maybe in 1 or 2 weeks. I think I have a few more things. I have some announcements to make. And is that we started a showcase page. I don't know how many of you went to that page, but we already have 3 submissions from from some of our best clients. Sorry. You can get inside and see how they use action form and other of our modules to implement real use cases. I mean, in our video you would see some how we describe a feature, what it does and how to configure it, but you don't see real world examples. So that's what we are trying to do with this showcase page, so you can see our modules being used, how people use our modules. Because we've seen various systems, we've seen invoicing systems built with our modules, we've seen e-commerce built with our modules, we've seen requests for codes, forms built. So it's important to put this page in place for new users to get an idea of what can be accomplished with our products. And this is also an invitation. So if you have a use case if you have a case study about a project that you've done, we'd love to list you here. Everything is transparent, so we want to promote you on our page, because we are interested to let as many people know that there are people that can help them with implementation. Yeah. So you would also get some exposure, so I think that will help. I think it's very valuable content to have. I know that the DNN, they are also trying to make their showcase up to date. I think we'll also have this problem someday, 3 years from now, let's say, but I think we are willing to take this risk, because it's very important to get the message out and let people know what can be done with our modules. So if you have any good content, it's more than welcome on our website. And now that we are done with the Action Form 3.7 release, I'm looking forward to having your feedback on our forums about what you like to see. There are already a lot of feature requests already open. You can drop comments in them or vote them. It's important because that's how we prioritize sometimes. I mean, at least the features that are not sponsored are derived from either Vision or from the forums. We also have some special thanks for this release. Denise Viter for the showcase that you saw, and also they invested a lot in our products. And Hans, also the showcase that I showed you earlier, is also a fan of Action Form and Action Grid, and he's building some amazing stuff. He's building more amazing stuff than I show you, but he had me promise I would not tell about it. And also Ted Laverty, he invested in Stripe integration. Jerry Mattox, he helps a lot of guys on the forums. He's actually in US. And Nathan Bolts, he's also helping a lot of guys in our forum. So before I end this webinar, let's see if we have other questions, because we still have a few time left. One question from Chavi. I hope I pronounced it correctly, Chavi. Is there a way to do Ajax post in a form? To do Ajax post in a form? Of course, you can. There are many ways to do this. I think the simplest way to do it is just to write your own jQuery code. Let me show you. So let's say that. What did I do here? let's say that when a drop-down changes, you'd like to invoke a web service. And then what you do is you can, I don't have a drop-down, let me use a text box. Here in the onChange binding, you can write jQuery code. So this binding expression run on client side, they are JavaScript mostly. Even if you put a token, that token translates to a JavaScript variable. Yeah. So also if you have like, let me see if I have some API. So this is the DNN API module, our module that also that creates API. So it creates a server method that runs a list of actions. So if I go into this method, it will already give me the jQuery code. So I can just take it from here and it will call this API endpoint. I don't know what your use case is, but basically this is what you do. You write some jQuery code here. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is you can just submit the form using a regular button and then make a server request. Yes. So make the server request. Yes. So server to server. And then use this action that not a lot of people know about it, that says update form data. And this sends the data back to the form. So instead of like when you click a submit button, usually the button ends up collapsing and displaying a message or an error message or doing a redirect or stuff like this. This action, update form data, just sends the data back to the form and the form updates to reflect the new data. So you can also do it like this, which is not client side, but it's a mix of client side and server side. Let's move on. Also Chavi, I have a form with a grid on the same page and I want to pass variable from the form to the grid. There's actually a mechanism to do this because both are Angular applications, and in Angular you can get the scope from outside the Angular application, and you can on that scope you can pass variables. And actually this question has been 2 or 3 times already on our forums. So I think if you search for scope or for variables or for something like this on our forum, you'll find the solution how to achieve that. One question from Francesco. If we not use a label columns, if the other version action is counted in Bootstrap? I'm not sure that I understand. If we not use a label column in the older version of action form is counted in Bootstrap. In this version it is not possible count. And example in layout mode. In layout mode, do you mean this layout mode? Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a problem. It works the same. If that's what you're asking, it works the same for the Bootstrap template and from the material template. So they both have the same functionality. They only have different styles, so to speak. So all the functionality of action form are still there, even with the new template. I hope I answered your question. We'll get back to it if not. One question from Eduardo. When sending an email, the application sends the confirmation of the email has been sent. However, is it possible to send yet another email without creating a page refresh? You can have to send email actions. I mean, you can have like I have here. You see, I have to send email action one after another, and only then I have a display message. If I understand correctly, maybe you want to send a message, show confirmation, and maybe wait for the user to do another action, to click the button again to send another message. If that would be the use case, then you can, in the display message, so you can send the first mail, and then in the display message, you can attach buttons. Yeah, so I don't think I have another button now, but if I had a button and I say send another, and I select this button here, what happens is that the first email gets sent, the message is displayed, but the message has a button at the bottom. And when that button is clicked, of course, we execute the action for this button. So you put the second email action here on the second button. And so on. You can chain like this. You can have another display message that has another button. You can do this kind of stuff. One question from Robert. Can you only make multi-step forms by using multiple DNN pages, like you showed in a video in 2013, or can you already make multi-step forms within one and the same action form module? Well, I think even back then we had two options to do this. You can do it like on multiple pages using the load and save form state actions, but you can also do them with bindings. Yeah. So let's say that I want the first field to show on step 1. I can use a binding like this, step 1, and then let's say that I want the last name to show on step 2. So on binding I can put step 2. So now these are two variables. There are actually AngularJS variables, and then I can make it that when I click a button. Let me create another button because I already have some actions on those ones. Go to step 2. I think I should be able to do something like scope that step 1 equals false and step 2 equals true. Yeah, so this is, I just use booleans, but you can I could have said that step equals 2. I think that would be a much nicer approach. So I can say I should go back to the first name and say step equals 1. Yeah? So this is a boolean expression that evaluates to true if step equals 1, and in the other one I would put step equals 2. Yeah. So now I have the button. That button executes some JavaScript code. That the JavaScript code sets the step to 2. And actually I think that initially it will not be 1, it will be undefined. So probably in the initialization script I have to set it to 1. So I know for sure this is possible, but I don't know if I got the right syntax with the scope where I should put it. But let's see. I know this should also be on our forum somewhere. Okay, so I think I didn't put it in the initialization screen. I think I put it in the sidebar. This sidebar initialization scripts. Okay, so this is, oh, okay, so step 2 worked. So now I see the last name only when I click the step 2, but step 1 didn't work. So I must have done something wrong. But in any case, this is the idea. So now I don't see the last name. I click go to step 2 and I see the last name. So you could hide some fields and show the others. I know that this is not ideal yet. I mean, we haven't done any work on this since then, but we have it on our list to implement a better mechanism for this. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. From Francesco. If we add a field without label, is it possible setting at 0 the space of the label in Bootstrap mode? Okay, so if you add a field without label, okay, I think I start to understand now. So basically you would like to this label width, so we have a label width of 3. You want to eliminate it for some controls only, not for all, but just for some. And if that is correct, we cannot do it now built-in. You can of course do it with a CSS hack, hide the label and extend the control. I think we have it on our list for some time to make these options be able to override it for each input type. We have this option on our list. So it will be 3 by default, but then for each field you could say this one should be bigger, this one should be small. Because then it will also be easier to build like multi-column forms, which by the way I read that they are not a good practice to build forms on multiple columns, because they confuse the user. They are not sure which field will be next. So it's recommended that you always build the forms vertical. So I think that's it. No more questions. So I think I'll hang up before you get a chance to write more. So again, thank you very much for being in this webinar. Thank you for using our products, for showing others what can be done with our products. And see you again next time.